Every once in a while, I like to revisit Overkill's The Walking Dead, and even though the game was released almost 7 years ago now and is no longer for sale, I still find myself coming back to it a few times a year. I have to admit though, it's probably my favorite bad game. When Overkill's The Walking Dead launched in 2018, it was met with overwhelmingly negative reviews. The game was plagued by bugs, performance issues, and design flaws that overshadowed any of its possibly redeeming qualities. In every way, it was basically a complete commercial failure, leading to its eventual removal from the storefronts by Skybound, a decision that I think ultimately was the wrong one. Now, I'm not going to go completely in depth about all the details of its failure and behind the scenes stuff. I've already made a video about that 2 years ago, and you can check that video out for a more detailed look into this game's failure, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. Hopefully I don't forget about it because that will be awkward. But despite all of its failures and it being removed from the storefront and not able to be purchased anymore, the game still has a small following that occasionally plays it, myself included. I remember back when they first announced this game being excited about the idea of a co-op Left 4 Dead style game set in the Walking Dead universe, and the trailers made it look gritty, like a gritty tactical experience where teamwork was essential to surviving hordes of walkers and dealing with hostile survivors. At the time, I was a massive Payday 2 fan. I mean, I still am, but back then, I was playing a lot of Payday 2, and seeing this new Walking Dead game from the same studio that made Payday 2 was exciting, especially since I was an even bigger Walking Dead fan at the time. You can imagine the kind of hype and excitement I had for this game after watching the trailers and seeing its announcement. So of course, as soon as it was available for pre-order, of course I hit that pre-order button, and I never refunded it, and I never canceled the pre-order, and I never refunded the game even after its disaster launch. And you know what? I'm glad I didn't. While the final product didn't really live up to the hype or expectations, there's a certain charm to the game that keeps me coming back every single year. I just want to take a small break in this video to talk about today's sponsor, which is of course me again for the 4th time. I mean, my goodness, I am on a roll, ain't I? I just want to take this time to say, hey, if you're enjoying this video, make sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing to see more content in the future. But without further ado, let's get back to your regular scheduled program. Every single time I return to this game, I try to find someone else to play with by usually using the quick play button. Usually I don't really find anyone else, but occasionally I'll find one, maybe if I'm lucky, 2 other people to play this game with. For example, when I played this game on the Steam Deck, which I didn't even think it would work on the Steam Deck, but for some reason it does, which is actually kind of cool, I actually also found somebody else to play with while I was playing on the Steam Deck. So not only was it cool that the game was running on the Steam Deck, I actually found someone else to play with while I was playing it on the Steam Deck, which was awesome. And if you want to see the video of me playing this game on the Steam Deck and check out its performance, I'll leave a link to it in the description. Hopefully I also remember that link because I'm really bad at remembering to put links in the description for some reason. Unfortunately though, I haven't found anyone playing since I found someone while playing on the Steam Deck, at least not at the same time I was. There was some people playing the game, but I just happened to not be playing the game at the time, but I know they were playing because I could see the Steam charts. There was 2 people playing. I don't know who those 2 people were, but I know you're still playing the game once in a while. Hopefully we can play the game together at some point. I think that would be cool. Don't know who you are though. I only know that you're playing it because of the Steam charts. It's also nice to still see discussions of people looking for others to play this game with in the Steam forums. Apparently the game is also slightly moddable, or at least that's what I heard. I haven't tried modding it myself yet, but it's something I'd like to explore in the future. There's also a talk of a leaked developer version of the final build of the game that was worked on, / there was DLC that was already done and in the game just waiting to be released that apparently you can download and play, but I haven't found it. I haven't really looked into it, but it's also something I might consider for a future video where I look into the cut content of this game. I think that could be interesting to see what changes were made and what was completed but ended up shelved because Skybound canceled the license agreement. One thing I noticed is how well the game runs. I was playing the game at 4K with max settings, and the game consistently stayed between 75 to 100 FPS, never dropping below 60. And I know it's a 6-year-old game by now, but it still looks really good in my opinion. But honestly, the most interesting part to it is how optimized this game feels and seems compared to many modern releases. These days, it's not uncommon to see new games, especially those built on Unreal Engine 5, launch in a less than ideal state, struggling with performance issues and technical issues even. And some games, for some reason, have ray tracing automatically enabled or permanently on where you can't turn it off in some newer releases. I'm not really sure why, but Unreal Engine 5 games seem to be mostly disasters in the performance department, at least. Don't get me wrong, Unreal Engine 5 is an incredible game engine and it's really good for animation also, but many games made with it are just some of the most unoptimized games that I've ever seen. As a little side note, Overkill's The Walking Dead was built using Unreal Engine 4, though I'm not sure exactly which version they used, but whatever version they did use, it's clear that a lot of effort went ensuring the game ran smoothly. And say what you want about the other flaws the game has, but optimization and performance and graphical fidelity are areas where I think the game shines. I mean, it runs on the Steam Deck, so there is that. Coming back to this game though and playing it solo feels like its own unique challenge, since most of the game was balanced around co-op play. Tackling missions alone adds a layer of difficulty that wasn't necessarily intended. Some missions even require you to play on very hard difficulty, which makes things even more intense and difficult, and sometimes a bit more frustrating. I remember a long time ago, I was playing with one other person, so there was just 2 of us instead of the max 4, and we were playing a mall mission, and I remember going to the mission, and we completed like 90% of the mission in 15 minutes, and then the last final 10%, it was like you were supposed to have 4 players because it took us like an hour and a half to get through the last 10% of the mission because there were so many zombies. It's like we would kill 50 zombies and there'd be 50 more 5 seconds later, and it was the time was mostly just because we had to kill so many zombies and push through so many zombies, and you run out of ammo. You're not even supposed to use your guns, but there's so many zombies at some points you just have to use your guns, which attracts more zombies until you get to max zombies and they're constantly chasing you. But either way, there's so many zombies sometimes in these levels that the levels can take way longer than intended because you have to just destroy and take out so many zombies. And I mean, I guess you call them walkers because it's in the Walking Dead universe, but I still always call them zombies, and I'll probably always forever call them zombies. Either way though, if you're playing the game by yourself, some missions even require you to play on the very hard difficulty, which makes things even more intense, and the sound mechanic in particular stands out as a major hurdle when playing solo, because if you make any noise whatsoever, more zombies will come. Also, if you're playing solo, completing a mission can either take a significant amount of time, like I'm talking an hour and a half for a mission that's supposed to be 15 minutes or something, or it can feel almost impossible, like you can't beat the mission because the constant waves of zombies always swarming your location, and it can quickly become overwhelming if you make too much noise, where it doesn't even matter how much noise you make anymore because zombies will just always surround you. Like, it'll be just the biggest wave of zombies at all times. And what makes it even more difficult is if you're on the missions where you have to take out survivors and they got like snipers and they're always shooting at you and they got machine guns and all that, so you have to take them out, but then you have like a constant wave of 50 zombies always swarming your location. It can take a really long time and you'll probably get frustrated a bit. And also, let's be real here, when you're in these missions, you're supposed to avoid making loud noises, but it's pretty much impossible when you're against armed human enemies, which for some reason always use their guns. And I feel like that's a design flaw in this game, because in my opinion, why would they always shoot all the time and attract zombies themselves? I mean, why aren't there any enemies who use melee weapons like bats, knives, or even riot shields with machetes or something, because it feels like they wouldn't want to attract endless zombies either, especially to some of their camps. So why are they always firing gunshots and shooting everywhere like they just don't care? So it can be super difficult and kind of frustrating when playing by yourself, but when you win and when you beat these missions and you continue further in the game, it just feels more rewarding when you do manage to succeed by yourself. What truly disappoints me isn't necessarily the game itself, it's the fact that the plug was pulled far too early for this game, and it had so much untapped potential, and it's kind of infuriating to think about what could have been if it had been given more time to develop. The foundation was there, a gritty co-op experience set in the Walking Dead universe with a focus on teamwork. That sounds like a setup for success right there. Sure, the initial release had its flaws, but many of those could have been addressed with updates and support over time, and I'm pretty sure the development team was looking at already addressing most of the issues and fixing it when the game was launched and after the feedback that they got. Just look at games like No Man's Sky, which went on to thrive after a rocky launch because their developers stuck with the game, even though it was called one of the worst games of 2016 and one of the biggest disappointments. It ended up turning itself completely around. I honestly believe that if Overkill's The Walking Dead had been allowed to grow and improve, it could have turned into a decent, maybe even great game. It's not hard to imagine that this game, after some updates, could still have a dedicated player base to this day, with regular updates and new content. Unfortunately though, we'll never know exactly what could have been, since the plug was pulled and the game was abandoned before it had the chance to reach its full potential. It's just a shame because the pieces were all there, they just needed more time and effort to come together. For me, that's a real tragedy of Overkill's The Walking Dead. Not what it was, but what it could have been after a year of content and a year of updates. Maybe even sooner, because to be honest, maybe even a few months of updates, just fixing some of the essential stuff that needed to be fixed, and then continuing to add on and further the game. It could have been so good. And you know what? I'm kind of surprised there wasn't some big lawsuit or something, because technically players paid for content that they were promised, but they never received it. It was apparently made, some of the later DLC that was supposed to release, it was apparently already made and done with, ready for release, but because Skybound got rid of the license agreement, it never was released. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video, so I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. Leave a comment below, tell me what you think about Overkill's The Walking Dead and its potential that it had. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button because you want to be subscribed. And I'll see you next time.